Yeah, we're talking about the difference between Irish 40 minutes and the Scottish 40 minutes, which I believe are around about an hour.
Yes,
so.
they correct themselves because the Irish start later.
Great stuff. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today. I mean, this is probably about, I think, the fifth time being across to CETA for the gathering. And I must admit, I love the word the gathering, you know, because actually, to me, that really sums up what BIM's about. It's probably what we'd call in Scottish a céilí. You know, it's about bringing people together. It's about having a good time. But you heard from Camone, it's about three things. It's about learning something new. It's about sharing. BIM is a lot easier if you share these things. It's about sharing data. It's about sharing knowledge. And I think, if anything, it's about trying to improve our industry, trying to improve the Irish construction industry. It's about connecting. You know, looking there. And Alan, you told me there's, what, 600 people in this room today? 600 people in this room today that, you know, we can start to connect and share. That's what will be in the paper. Yeah, good stuff. So who am I? I'm David Philp. A couple of jobs. Number one, I've got a day job. I'm global head of BIM and this thing called MIC, Main Information Contracting, at AECOM. I also chair the Scottish Government's BIM delivery group, and I'm part of the UK's BIM task group since around about 2010. And the question that was posed for me today, and I think it was very much a question, you know, to think. So it was to postulate over actually BIM. You know, do we mandate it? You know, to mandate or not to mandate? And sometimes, you know, I think it's rather axiomatic to me and probably sometimes too close to it. You know, I've been through this now for about 5 years. When I say I've been through it, along with probably about 3 million people in terms of UK. So to me, you know, I must admit, you know, the journey I've been on, it really is almost axiomatic that you go down that mandate route. But the big question, you know, obviously Ireland's on a journey. You know, we see it in terms of, you know, Irish building, in terms of the BIM question. We had Digital Construction Week where CETA was over. You know, trying to help Ireland in that journey. So I've been here across 5 times. Every time we meet CETA, the journey's kind of moved on a bit, you know, from the what is it to the why, trying to understand the business case, to starting to think more and more now about the actual doing, the transformation, and actually how do we start to turn this thing called BIM into very much that thing called delivery excellence. And of course, it wouldn't be the same without the old Mrs. Dolphy. But, you know, it is a real good big question, you know, about doing it. I think it's interesting. I think we can learn a lot of things from history. You go back to the UK, you know, I think we've got a very rich sort of heritage of actually promoting these things called industry reform. You look back to almost the 1940s with the Simon Report that started talking about, you know, a more collaborative approach to construction. You can see there in that image, starting to think more and more about off-site manufacturing. Fast forward to 1994, I'm sure a lot of people remember, you know, the Leffin Report, the constructing the team, and start to actually talk about, you know, public sector client taking that real leadership. And you think this is really about BIM. You know, the importance of coordinated project information. 1998, Egan, talking about the whole manufacturing system and how we can take some of these constructs into that world of construction, production of components. I think that's a real lessons learned. 2009, I think there was a real fantastic report that came out. It's a construction excellence report. The gentleman that done it, Andrew Wilsonholm, now Chief Executive up at Crossrail. Can I ask how many folk have read the report, any of these reports? Hands up. Okay. So probably, please, I would recommend if you go down and load, you know, Never Waste a Good Crisis. It kind of reflected back on the previous ones, but, and you see with Andrew, he mentioned it, you know, we're starting to see groundbreaking things in terms of, okay, we call it BIM, but we're talking about digitisation of our sector, we're talking about how we use our data. But interesting point, I asked Andrew the question, you know, did we waste a good crisis? And Andrew said, actually, we're getting polarised. You've got people that not just can do BIM, but you've got people that can actually take a whole life cycle approach about an asset, start to get the benefits, and those that can't. So you've got to ask the question, if there's not a mandate, do you end up with a kind of two-tier system? Not in terms of those that are doing BIM, but those can get better outcomes. And I think it's a key thing when we think about BIM. I think we're moving from outputs to very much start to think about outcomes. And I think as we start to move on in this journey to BIM, we'll think more and more about how BIM and data can think about servitization of our business models. But you've got to ask yourself, you know, there's been so many rich thinking, and you look at, you know, it's obvious some of the things within there. You know, why did they fail? And I think actually the big part, if they had been mandated, and I kind of look in terms of, I think it's been a success, the government construction strategy, and the terms of the BIM component, but actually it was because it was a mandate. It was very much a client taking a leadership role. And I think, you know, we hear things level 2 BIM, level 1 BIM, and, you know, as if there's, for me, this whole thing in terms of this journey towards digitisation. And I think that's really what it is more than BIM. And I think sometimes the term's almost getting a bit outdated. For me, that journey is the destination. It doesn't stop at 2016. It doesn't stop at 2025. It'll continue to manifest itself into new things. And I think, I often see this, and this is somebody that somebody mocked up. I don't think there's any resemblance to myself. But, what I would say is, sometimes, we really have started, to bring people together. And I think, a mandate has done two things. You could have got something as simple as level 2 BIM by 2016, very clear targets by a client. And you look back, this was our vision. You go way back to start this year, and we said, okay, we've got a mandate, we've got a 4-year programme. We have to try and create, and we're still doing this. The task group is still there with our meeting yesterday, trying to put a wrapper. We've been building standards, but we now have to put a wrap around it in terms of data exchanges, guidance to industry around about there as well. Big part of the mission, we've got 3 million people in the UK, that are on the journey. We've got to help raise awareness, and the reason for a 4-year programme is give people time to get ready. So it's a big part. So if Ireland's getting ready, you've got to give the industry enough time to retool, think about reprocessing in terms of what we're doing, and obviously to try and raise awareness within the client sector as well. I think a big thing about the mandate as well is, it needs a bit of a leap of faith. We were testing hypotheses, and we still are. And I think the big part as well is in terms of country. You look at Ireland in terms of all the things you're doing, it's about taking a real leadership role in terms of what you're doing. And I think that's a big thing for government and indeed for the client, to take that role in terms of moving industry on. And I think the big thing is starting to export what we're doing as well. And trying to create that solid foundation to move from collaboration to integrated working. And the big part is, at some point, industry has got to take this on. Government can't maintain standards and keep doing it. It's got to be able to be something, a baton, that can be passed as well. You've always seen this, but the only thing I want to point out, you can see the red line, you heard about 2016, it's a staging post. We will continue this journey from that world of collaboration, right into that world of integration. We're constantly pushing up with industry at the time. And I think you've always got to remember, construction industry has an exceedingly long tail. We often talk about the examples of the tier ones, the big designers, the big contractors. Actually, this is about the small SME. Probably 95% of construction industry is made up of them. We've got to make sure that they're on the journey as well. We've got to make sure that the intelligent client, and I think it's a good thing, but a mandate can help them. And I think if anything, you look back in terms of 2010 to where we are now, we look at the 600 people in the room today, and you think actually it's about a great conversation. And I've been in industry, I know you'll find it hard to believe now, for 25 years. And you can look a bit shocked if you want, but I can remember, we talked about what I'd done. I started my career off as a young engineer, setting things out. I spoke to other engineers. I went on to become a project manager, spoke to other project managers. Now I speak to people across a whole project life cycle, FM operators, in fact, people that finance projects. And I think if anything, we're having a much more better conversation about project life cycle, especially with operation. I think that mandate is, again, it's helped bring people together and have a great conversation. I think when you do that, that's how things start to change. I also think that mandate kind of forces you to put a mirror up to yourself. It kind of stress tests things that we're doing. And we often saw, there's been little client leadership. There's really no thought in terms of that asset life cycle. It's very much CapEx or OpEx driven. And I think in terms of culturally, we still see very much, it's adversarial conditions. And I think what we see, actually mandates can help engender a cultural shift. And I think if anything, we talk about BIM, this is anything, if I've seen, this is a complete, if you like, it's a behavioural change as much as technology or process. For me, it's still about people. And in fact, I'm seeing the term more and more appearing, Citizen 2.0. What does a good citizen look like in this digitised space? Someone that shares information, they think about security. And for me, that mandate is starting to help change, if you like, some of the behaviours around about that as well. BIM is obviously happening all around the world, and I think what we're seeing is, it's offering that digitisation. We're seeing it in manifesting itself into different strategies from Norway to Singapore. We've got colleagues across from Singapore this week talking about their experience, offering sort of gateways, but at the same time I think there's some trepidation. What does this mean? Can we get ready for all this as well? But I think what we're seeing is we're starting to see both roadmaps, long-term strategies starting to appear. So you look at that heat map, it's my colleague over in Italy, Professor Angelo Cabrini. I think it's quite a good heat map in terms of where we're going. You can see the green over in the UK of a mandate. But actually, you can see over in Ireland, it's shown there in terms of amber, because actually there's lots of good things that are going on here. But you can start to see all around the world, there's everybody starting on the journey. I know that's mainly continental Europe, but we're starting to see all these things appearing. And you can see on the right-hand side, the EU BIM working group, starting to bring all the member states together, because actually, if we're all unifying and pulling in the same direction, I think it's a big thing. I think for me, Europe's actually better together than individual countries. We start to think about common processes and standards. So this all in mind, we start to see, governments, private sector clients are all starting to think about, a mandate. I think in the loosest terms of the word. So the big question is, who should drive this? Do we let industry drive it and we create some natural equilibrium? Or should government do it? You can see the right-hand side of my other job, Scotland. That's been the big question there. You can see there a headline, level 2 in projects over the overdue threshold. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. But it's starting to grow and grow and grow because countries are realising there's a real danger of what happens if we don't actually mandate. As across in Spain, in terms of Madrid, you can see them in terms of their journey, penciling in perhaps 2018 for a mandate, but trying to create roadmaps. But interestingly enough, they're saying actually we're better together as Europe and trying to come up with some degree of harmonisation of our standards. And I think that's a real important point. Russia, we look at them. Government, again, trying to support pilot projects, trying to raise awareness of BIM and trying to get it off the ground. And I've been across it working in St. Petersburg years back. It's incredible to see how quickly they can adapt and push on with their journey as well. You'll see on the left-hand side, there's ISO standards getting built at the moment. You'll hear more and more, if you're an ISO fan, which I'm sure you are, 19650, which is starting to take some of the UK standards as a backbone and develop it into a harmonised standard. I like the slide on the right-hand side. We're starting to see more and more about some of the rich thinking that's coming as well. Over in Germany, you may have heard of this thing called Industry 4.0. The ultra-smart in terms of manufacture and logistical model, and how we can take these same constructs that likes of Bosch and Siemens are doing, thinking about hyper-analytics and starting to think about predictive analysis, logistics, and bringing that into the whole world of the construction arena. This is over in Canada, and I really like this. There's a very clear roadmap that's trying to encourage BIM and also develop country standards. No mandate as such, but you can see a logical progress. There's looking at the key themes in terms of standards, training, and what that looks like. So everybody's starting to take a bit of a different take in terms of what we look at it. Our friends in the US, well, what they know, we saw some fantastic stuff from Cologne in terms of what they're. We've got the national BIM standards. We've also got the BIM forum, which has done fantastic work in terms of level of detail. And we've also had in terms of the GSA as well, actually putting mandates. So I think we've been quite lucky in the UK because geographically we're a lot smaller, and I think it comes down to almost politics at times, can you mandate something? So we're seeing some great stuff in the US, and I must admit, and I'm interested to get Camone's thoughts on this. This is some of the stuff I'm seeing coming out, great guidance. Like in New York City, fantastic guidelines. But the one on the right-hand side, I think, particularly pointed out is Massachusetts Port Authority. And actually, as a client, they both looked at, what they called horizontal and vertical in terms of buildings and infrastructure, put great guidelines, but it done for me one thing. It brought together not just BIM, but it started to think about collaborative working practices and that world of lean within there as well. So please, they're available online. I would advise you to have a real download of them. Fantastic guide. So we often think, it's like top trumps, who's the best? And I think when you look around the world, if you look at it through different lenses in terms of policy, standards, data requirements, there's a huge blend of really good stuff that's actually out there to pick from. We've got colleagues we mentioned across from Singapore, they're starting to think about, if you like, the regulatory process. They've got an e-system where people can actually put their models in on certain projects, and we can start to think about automation of the regulatory process, again, as part of a mandate. Over in the Middle East, Dubai, we're starting to see mandates appearing there on projects of a certain size. So what we're not seeing is just mandates, but actually the term where appropriate as well. What's appropriate in Dubai? There's certain triggers to actually instigate BIM as well in terms of doing. Start of the year, I was over across in Australia and New Zealand. Different thoughts about what they should do as well. They started to build some standards round about it, but at the same time, there was real concern over there about actually, should it be for effective BIM? Should it be left to the marketplace to do that? Is there enough capability in terms of where they are at this moment in time? So we talk about mandates. I think it's fair to say, on the flip side, there's undoubtedly challenges. We mentioned it needs a leap of faith. At this moment we've tested, if you like, the level 2, probably for capital expenditure. We're now going into operational expenditure. We think it's axiomatic, again, there's value in there, but we're testing hypotheses within there as well. Capability of the supply chain, you know, where are we actually, do we actually have a datum? Do we know where Ireland is today in terms of both capability and capacity? And I think there's a huge disconnect between both. You might go into an office that's got very good capability, but it's maybe one person. You know, does that capacity lie there as well? And it's great, okay, you can have it in the supply chain, but equally, we need to have that within the procurer as well. We need to have the procurers that become very good at buying and maintaining digital data. We've got to make sure it doesn't constrain the SMEs as well. We mentioned they are our lifeblood. We've got to make sure they can play their part. We encourage, and I think one of the big things in the UK, encouraging open BIM standards so that everybody play their part has been key. And it should not stifle competition. I think that's the big thing. There should be many, many ways to actually achieve your data and get it into there. And I think you've got to ask the question, you know, ask yourself for the next couple of days, is Ireland ready for that big transformational change? Personally speaking, I'm seeing some amazing things there. And my answer to all the above, I would certainly think you're in a case where it's either a green, a tick, or maybe some degree of an amber within there as well. So when we talk about BIM, actually, why should governments really care? Well, actually, I think it comes down to one thing, and actually, digital data is really needed for built assets, very much a strategic level. And you see it all around the world, and you know, I've been fortunate enough to travel. You get to see places, and one country for me stood out. It was Estonia, you know, over in Tallinn, you know, this little blob in the Baltic coast. And I was amazed by there. They've now got, if you like, what they call the Estonian e-citizen. You know, they're trying to digitise Estonia, all their transactions, all their parliamentary, and start to put it on. So you can imagine, you know, it's not actually constrained by where it physically is, because everything's been digitised. And imagine we can start to think about that in terms of using our data. You know, we think in terms of trading. Can we make it borderless? You know, can we start to think about what that looks like? You think about our industry, it's probably one of the last that still, you know, live in that world of, you know, paper-based contracts. Can we start to move to make our transactions digital in terms of security, verified within there as well? And for me, this is what we're heading towards, and this is the importance, if you like, of the whole, if you like, that idea of why a government should mandate. It's about trying to create that digital estate. So you can see on the left-hand side, we have all these things called PIMs, because we like good acronyms in BIM world. So a PIM is not a drink, I'm sure you can, it's come up to Winter Cup time, but Project Information Model. So you can see there are a series of school projects that are brought together into an asset model. But actually, if you're a client in terms of government or any sort of owner of a portfolio, it's about trying to create that digital asset management strategy. And that's a key thing for me, being able to aggregate lots of data sets up. And you can really only do that if you have some degree of unification in terms of clear purpose, in terms of what we're doing in structure. So actually, and we've seen this in the last probably 12 months, we're talking less about BIM on a project, we're talking more about the E word in terms of enterprise. It's been much more in terms of that portfolio level, in terms of what we're doing. Actually, I think the big thing, you think you're a client, you know, and let's be honest, most governments are the biggest client, it makes sound economic sense. You think about UK, you know, £90 billion we spend in construction every year, and you look at it, you know, how much the prize is, you know, we're talking about 12 trillion in terms of probably infrastructure by 2025. I'm sure Ireland wants to win some of that. Well, how do you do it? You become competitive. I think that's a big thing about BIM. It's not just creating pretty models, but actually turning that into more competitive ways of working and winning work. BIM is there as an enabler. It makes better procurement, we make better decisions from it, and I think that's a key part. You also look at the value of digital construction services as well. It's set to grow by to about 30 billion as well. Huge prize, and I think that's imperative that, you know, government can take lead to actually help, you know, your nation, your organisations start to move in terms of that journey. And you can see there, I think we all know about construction economics. You know, for every pound that you invest in a construction, it's probably got a multiplier of at least 3. You know, we have got a large value chain in terms of what we do. So think about what we've been trying to do in the UK. We're trying to save 20%. Build 5, get 1 free. It means we can build more. Build more, it's good for the economy. And I think the big thing, you know, digital construction has got a potential boost for SME. SMEs have been very agile, I think, in terms of this move to thing. It's going to help them in terms of their journey, a journey of growth. And I think it can really boost, if you like, Irish exports as well, in terms of digital construction services of BIM, but more so about information management as well. And I think the big thing, this whole thing called digitisation, I mean, it reaches different strata in terms of what we're doing, from product manufacturers. It is creating new jobs. We were talking to a few folk at the bar last night over some Diet Coke, just for record purposes, about how people are now coming in from areas like computer sciences, analytics. All these different people are getting involved now in this construction arena. So it's creating many new jobs. But quite simply put, this is, if you like, about, we're starting to think about clients buying their data once, and having some degree of harmonisation of requirements really helps that. About data growth, being able to decide it, but over an entire project life cycle. And I think that's really been key as well. And again, you look back to the reality is, well, we just can't suffer what we're doing anymore in terms of, we do suffer, we have an ail, and that's that low growth of UK construction productivity. And I think in terms of reality, in the UK, our national economy just can't afford it. You look in terms of, other countries, what's going on, they're not moving at a sales pace. You look in terms of in China, what's going on, if this thing works, let's see. Probably not hiding to nothing here, but I'll give it a go anyway. Oh, I'm going to try this, let's see if this works. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Fast forward. This is in China. You saw the other thing was, concrete printing of 10 houses in 10 days. I don't know how well we can see this. This is launching, girders over in China. And you look at the speed, the rate, the innovation that's actually happening. And, you've got to ask yourself the question, we come towards 2025, if we don't change, could we imagine, the UK, could you imagine Ireland actually where there's no indigenous tier ones? The reality is, we're seeing things that are happening all around the world that's actually game-changing. And BIM should be about trying to create modern methods of construction. It should be about innovation. We're seeing these amazing things. Okay, we can launch viaduct segments, right there. But the amount of money that's going on in terms of investment, you're building 30 stories in 15 days. They're tying together modelling and advanced manufacture. So don't think about BIM in isolation. We talk about BIM mandates. Also think about how we can stimulate modern methods of construction. You can watch this at your leisure. I'm sure it is better than the Irish X Factor and all that sort of thing. Is there an Irish X Factor? Okay, that's good. No, here we are. All right, let's get this back again. Let's get it back on track. All right. So actually, what we said was actually we need clients that are going to give us leadership, that unified purpose, and I think that's very clear. For me, and you look at our industry. Let's be honest, we're a bit of a basket case. Most industries point them right direction, they'll go there. With construction, we've got to constantly pull people in, and I think one of the successes we had in terms of the programme in the UK with the mandate was also the role of the chief construction advisor, if you like, the chief shepherd, if you like, that was there to help, bring it, try and align all our great institutes, bring together industry in terms of what we're doing as well. So it's been a really important part, that sort of clear leadership in terms of what we're doing. The politicians, I thought, are really bought into this, about leadership towards that digital economy. I mean, it's been interesting. They've all got their take on it in the UK. We have what's called PXCR. We actually, the politicians monitor what's going through the mandate. It's not a case of, come on, 2016's coming, hopefully get it. It's monitored on a monthly basis of what's going through the pipeline, in terms of growth. Are we achieving things? And we've been lucky enough in the UK. This is an award we won over in the US, the FIATEC organisation. And it wasn't about government, it was about partnership. How industry and government have worked together in terms of the journey plan. I think that's been quite unique in terms of where we're doing. There's some quotes I think that are really good. I'm sure many of you on the Patrick McClamey, who's chair of Building Smart International, and Phil Bernstein at Autodesk. You can see some of the words in the clouds there. The mandate has been about creating growth. It's about creating innovation and trying to create new opportunities. And I think that's been really, really key in terms of what we're doing. And I think, this is, okay, we're proud. I'm sure you'll see a construction band Ireland. And the picture was actually taken from CETA, and it was in terms of, that it was young people from Class Your Own. I can't remember what age they were, about 13 years old. And we had another one in Digital Construction Week. These people get this stuff. Actually, what's the problem? But we've got to make sure there's an industry that they want to come in and be able to work in. It's collaborative within there. Wow, how'd that move there? But we really need to think about trying to create these opportunities that, we've got a modern, we've got a vibrant, a diverse people, and I think, again, the mandate's really helped to make that happen. We'll create capacity in the marketplace as well. And you look at in terms of UK adoption, this is a McGraw-Hill study, and it's actually saying that, okay, I think you take surveys with a pinch of salt, but I know High Speed 2 undertook some that said, as a result of the mandate, we're probably 56% of organisations in the UK had now touching or some capacity in terms of level 2 capability, which I think was really quite impressive. And there was a bit for me that I liked, actually. That's the question, 2/3 of all UK owners report a very high impact, and actually 64%, were actually saying they were encouraged to do BIM, and this was because of the mandate. The mandate triggered people to start on their journey. Would we have got there? Well, probably arguably so, but I think it's really helped accelerate the journey. It's moved it onto people's strategy list, people are resourcing for it, and it's helped stimulate that change. And I think the big thing, if you're thinking you're an organisation, you think, someone's asking me to make some transformational change, it might be some retooling within my sector. Actually, I think you'd be more compelled to do it if you can see a big pipeline of opportunity coming through. And I think that's been one of the key things. Mandate means we've got a huge pipeline. I mean, last year alone we had £10 billion of level 2 projects going through the public sector. That's set to double with High Speed 2. So we're talking about 20 billion in level 2 that's saving between 12 and 20% in terms of savings. So I think if you're making an investment, if you've got a government that's saying, actually, we've got a huge portfolio, you are more likely, it's a much more compelling business case. And I think it's a lot easier if we are all pulling in that same direction. You saw this before, but I think that's what it's kind of done. The task groups in there to try and keep it pushing up. It's like any transformational change programme. You go through turbulence. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep working with people. In the UK, I think it's one of the things that's been a success, is we call them our BIM for groups. It's trying to create these communities of practice that go out, take their own time, to actually work and help improve industry and look through their own lenses and their own communities of practice. We all know about the government construction strategy, but what I would say about the mandate, it was part of that wider construction strategy that involved benchmarking, soft landings, performance management. So again, if you are thinking about a mandate, I think one of the wise things, it was part of a wider strategy within there. You can see some of the things that it sought to do. It was about early supply chain engagement. We wanted to try and encourage off-site design for manufacture and actually better visibility of pipelines, as I mentioned. And I think one of the big things was alignment of this whole, what we call probably DBFO, the design right way through a project life cycle. So where we are in the UK, well, we've now completed all the British standard for level 2. You can see the onion there, working away from security to soft landings to information management to everybody's favourite, called this thing called COBE. But we've got them all in place now, and I think we're seeing tremendous uptake in terms of not just within the UK. I mean, I mentioned I also work with ACOM. We're starting to see it in places such as India, people exporting these British standards. So we've got 2 dates now in the UK. We've got the 4th of April for the mandate. And actually, what does that really mean? Well, as a mandate, it essentially means that we've got employers that are putting well-informed employers' information requirements for level 2 in the marketplace. It's as simple as that. And we've got another stretch date of October 2016, because actually there's been huge success. And the idea is by October that the government client will be in a position where they can validate data. Because what we know is just because it's in models doesn't mean it's right. So we've got to be able to validate data as well. But clear employers' information requirements as within a contract or within a design appointment. And I think one of the key things is you leave the complexity of the supply chain, the how question, the innovation, the ingenuity, what tools you pick should be very much, so we mentioned already, as part of the mandate, it should be about encouraging open data standards, such as IFC and such as. And I think that's been a great thing. Okay, COBE's been a challenge, but we're starting to see people now coming up with great ways of actually achieving it, pulling it from other systems. And I think it's really encouraged the use of IFC. Okay, I want to talk, I think I've got 15 minutes left, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Okay, that means I've got half an hour. I'm joking. Yeah. So actually, what does a mandate go through? And this is what we're seeing now. I mentioned, a big part of my job now is the Scottish Future Trust. It starts off, I think, with some degree of a strategy. We've got a strategy, and it's probably a wider strategy than just BIM. We then start to think about, what are the recommendations, because that's probably what they are at early stages. And you've got to launch it. You've got to give industry enough time to get ready and prepare for it. You then probably assess capability. You know, where are we as a client? Where's industry in terms of where we're doing? And off the back of that, you'll probably start to inform some sort of an implementation plan. Probably build some resource around about it. We mentioned the UK, we've got a BIM task group. You'll start to create your standards and tools. Well, I'm sure that, you know, there's many we mentioned that you can pick from. You know, in the UK, you've got all the level 2 standards, and there's great guidance from all around the world. You test hypothesis. There might be pilot projects that fit your vernacular. You know, what works maybe in UK mainland might not fit different. We're doing that in Scotland just now. You'll refine it. You'll probably some degree of upskilling in terms of either the client or within the supply chain. You'll probably put some guidance out. And it will probably at that point will it start to turn from, if you like, a recommendation into some degree of policy when you've been through that refining, the learning piece of it. And then you'll probably do what we do. You put out EIRs into the marketplace, and at some point you'll move into this thing called legacy, and you might move to, you know, whatever the next part of your transformational journey is, if it's level 3A or such like. So a nice comparison, I think, is between, there's my hometown of Stirling, very beautiful, a population of Scotland around about 5 million, and you've got Ireland, a population roughly about 4.6, I believe, and obviously 600 are here today, which is fantastic. And I think in terms of actually, you know, cultural, we're very similar, very refined people, very intellectual, very prudent people. So, you know, I think there's a good sort of comparison there. You know, we're roughly about the same. So what's Scotland doing? Well, back in 2013, there was a view of the Scottish Public Sector Procurement Review, and out of that came a recommendation, very simple, that, you know, where appropriate, there's a key word, appropriate for Scotland, projects should be level 2 by April 2017. Remember, it's a recommendation. It was supported by the Scottish ministers, and it had 5 supplementary BIM recommendations. So if I was going through it, I'm sure it would go through something very similar. You've got your headline recommendation, and then it had these 5 other ones. You know, we need some resource. We need to make sure it's appropriate. There's some degree of assessment within there. Does it give you value? Create appropriate guidance for the Scottish marketplace. And make sure that we actually trial it. You know, does it work in terms of Scottish law, Scottish vernacular, Scottish supply chain? We're on that journey just now. And I think the big part, we'll talk about performance improvements, but we need good KPIs, good data. I mean, does that exist in Ireland just now? Can you measure it? Can you measure improvements? I'm sure Alan will tell us there's some good datums out there. And I think number 66 was the big fit with actually, this is about embracing new technologies, but also how it can stimulate modern methods of construction. We defined what it meant for us, and we said, you know, actually, it's not really just about modelling, it's more about information management. And I think that's a key part. You know, you've got a client that's thinking about information management. And in Scotland, it's also been about the soft lines, that total asset lifecycle approach as that golden thread. And the key things that we're starting to think about as well within there is, you know, what are we doing? Well, we're building a roadmap. We're making sure it meets the recommendations of the review and trying to offer leadership to the Scottish industry. We're trying to create a programme of change and give that appropriate guidance as well. With a series of why, and I think that's the first question we find, that, you know, people ask, you know, what's your why statement? And actually, it's about the ability for Scotland to better procure its assets digitally and really maintain them. There's huge value there in terms of client buying the data once and starting to think about how we can get, you know, we can test things at pre-construction stage right for a whole project life cycle. And I think for me, you know, these are the things as well. You know, let's improve the image of, you know, Scottish construction. A young girl up there is my daughter, who's 9 years old. She can do this stuff. She didn't want to come into construction a couple of years because she thought construction was about Bob the Builder. It was for males, and she had to buy herself a hammer. But she's now seeing, you know, the diversity in construction. She's seeing it actually as quite exciting. It's diverse. There's lots of different job roles that she can take and really wants to go down that. So a big part of it is rebranding what we're doing. So you can see there are all the different use cases that are there. And we're going through a series of what we call 5 horizons, you know, between now and 2017. We've done the first part. You know, we've got a plan, which we've launched. We've got an implementation plan. We're now in terms of mobilisation phase around about there as well. We're setting up our working groups, our governance. And the big part we're doing is actually research. What's all the good stuff that's going on round about the world that we can learn from? We've got pilot projects about to kick off that we want to learn and measure how they're performing. We want to create guidance, and we mentioned in terms of guidance that looks, you know, around the world, all the good stuff that's going on. And ultimately, we'll launch it. We've been working with all the public sectors to look in terms of what capability procurers have. Now, it's quite interesting. You're probably the first to see this. 57% have some forms of procurer in terms of BIM capability, but what I think is a good starting point. We mentioned that, you know, with level 2, when we're out, the high-speed 2 is 56%. So I think that mid-50s is coming as a common stage. And it was interesting to see, are they defining it? And it was quite impressive, I thought, that actually without any mandate in place, 57% were actually on their journey. And this starts to think about the mandate as well. Should it be level 1 or level 2? Because you can see there, most folk are still defining level 1 BIM. And actually, that's no bad starting point, is it? You think, if we could get everybody working in a common data environment, sharing information, and we've also, I think let's stop for a second. Level 1 BIM, common data environment, BS 1192/2007. How many folk are doing common data environment working? Okay, fantastic. Okay, it's like pantomime. That side's winning, yeah. So on the basis of 600 people in there, that must have been 100. But so journey sounds as if, go through level 1, common data environment, design management practices, BS 7000. Get them in place first. It's always back to the very basics before we think about level 2. We've been looking to try and understand where clients need upskilling. And actually, it's interesting, number 1, they want to understand the benefits of it. They still need real benefits case round about this. And they want that general awareness. So there's a huge amount still where we've got to do within that whole BIM 101. We're putting in some degree of assessment, capability tools for the supply chain, for them to help measure where that data is, supported by like the CIOB and Construction Excellence free tools. And we've got first early adopter projects on the journey already. A National Health Service in Scotland, you can see their journey plan, you can see their employers' information requirements. The first ones are actually on the road already. So, you think about, we launched this a couple of weeks ago and already we're into our first pilot. So Ireland, I'm sure, can go on that same very rapid journey plan as well. Now, I think this one is really quite key in terms of mandating, because Scotland had the word appropriate within there, where appropriate. So we actually said, on the basis of our capability assessment, actually, is it level 1, is it level 2? So we've created, this is just a straw man, an Aunt Sally of what we reckon it looks like, to say actually, if a project's over the EU threshold and there's a real clear need for data, it comes a level 2 project. If it's under that threshold, we put another means test within there that says actually, are you getting value for money with it? So there's a value for money test. We're building a ready reckoner. And then a case, okay, it might not be a level 2 project, but actually it will then move it into level 1. It's not saying it's a not BIM project, but it'll give appropriate that it might be level 1 for some early adopter procurers and create that stage pull through of level 1 and level 2. If someone's maybe a local authority at the start of their journey, get them to level 1 might be the first appropriate step before they move on to level 2. So we've created this appropriate tool they're about to try and digitise at this point in time as well. We also mentioned some of the things as there. This is the tests that we mentioned as we're going through the trial projects. We're testing the value of it. These data transactions, is it giving value? Does the supply chain understand it? Are we still giving competition within there? Is it stifling competition? Is it general enough so it works for both vertical and infrastructure projects? Is it open? Can everybody play their part within there? Is it building capacity? And again, making sure non-proprietary software. So the key things we're testing there. And again, the Scottish BIM wrapper that we're trying to put round about it as well. I can't remember why it was in South Africa. I got some rugby reference at a point in time just to wind a few people up, as we do. So this is what we reckon 2017 comes like. We've still got the heart of it, the whole level 2 suite. But we've got things that we've learned. We've got a grading tool. We've built business cases and case studies from the pilot projects. We have a series of templates there for supply chain procurers. And we've got all these things that are going to help in terms of that journey plan. I also want to mention this as well, because that's from a government point of view. You can see how Scotland's very rapidly moved in terms of from starting pure a couple of weeks ago to actually high speed 2. A big program management who are mandating BIM as well. And it's interesting, this is from a couple of slides they had earlier in the week at the Rail BIM Summit. And they said, BIM for them as a client level is a real opportunity to realise value from their digital assets. They want to get better value in terms of what they're doing. A great quote from Andrew McNaughton up at High Speed 2, the technical. It's actually the lifeblood. This is what they use to make their decisions, all this rich digital data. And you can see there, they're essentially building 2, as this Crossrail has done. They built that very much the virtual railway and the physical railway, building it digitally, optimising it, simulating it, doing all that within the modelling, building it flawlessly on site, but thinking very much at enterprise level. Now, I really like this slide because I think actually this is the importance of the mandate. Can anybody see the little red devil within there? Yeah? Now, the devil is really important because this is what I think, this is my view on life, purely mine personal. you start off without any mandate. You start off with the best intentions of the world, yep, and then something starts to go wrong, you hit the turbulence. What do we generally do? We kind of default back to the thing. You can see there, it sits at a turnpike. The wee devil goes, let's go back to creating some CAD drawings or such like. Because it's a mandate, you plough on, you get through the pain, you get through the benefits, you continue onwards. So for me, the mandate is the one that says, actually, keep going. Let's get through it, let's work together. Otherwise, you go down, you go back to type again. So I think that's hugely. Interestingly, through that mandate, they've already banked £500 million of savings. So they've looked at the level 2 for the early adopter projects. And I've done this, I think this is really good. They've called it the logic mapping. What's that, sir? 5 minutes? 55 minutes?
2.
I thought you were saying you're enjoying it. So we're just about there. So they're starting to think about that logic linking in terms of how you measure the benefits and linking. I think it's a big part as well in terms of your journey. I think mandates ensure that we can be future-wise. In the UK, we've now got the Construction 2025 report that's starting to look beyond, if you like, starting to think, you hear the term Digital Built Britain, this thing called level 3 BIM. Okay, what is it? We're starting to think about what it is, but it's essentially moving from collaboration to integration, web-based, and we're starting to think about automation of process as well, but very much in terms of performance-based contracting, telemetry, Internet of Things, all these great stuff that you'll hear no doubt from Claire about very shortly in terms of how that will change our construction industry. And I think for me that's a paradigm shift, and that needs real leadership to make this happen. You can see that journey plan going through there, but it's about smart assets, the digital people, the digital citizen. You bring them together and you get maximised business outcomes. Because we've got to turn this not just into pretty models, but actually improved business outcomes. You can see the map there for that thing called level 3. We're starting to think of operational activity, performance data. We're starting to upscale it also in terms of that context of smart cities. And again, by going through performance data, we're thinking about changing technical standards, but we're also thinking about contractual and behavioural as well. Penultimate slide. This is penultimate, yeah. Scottish penultimate, that means you're 5 for them. So you start to think, this is what I think it looks like. This is my own, within ACOM, we get to travel, we see the world, and I think of it more as this thing called Construction 4.0, this fourth industrial cycle that we're starting to see. You can see the key things around about that whole Internet of Things. We're starting to think about smart asset networks and telemetry. We can't ignore additive manufacturing, industrial 3D printing. We mentioned in Germany, the whole manufacturer 4.0. Cybersecurity, data provenance, all massive. We've got to start thinking more about performance-based. Data-driven design, I think, is huge as well. But also the smart materials. And we've got to think more and more about, and I think, you can see that the image on the left-hand side there, serious gaming, thinking about performance from our model, not just does it look good aesthetically, does the space work, but actually, is it going to improve business performance through there as well? It's also about, I think, some degree of self-procuring, self-refining assets as well, that are continually learning, real-time post-occupancy evaluation and refining at lightning speed. So last slide. Well, what's the alternative to this? You're starting on a huge journey. And I think if anything, the mandates that I've seen, it's helped us keep out that bowl of spaghetti. If you don't, I think there's a huge risk that you've got no unifying direction. You'd end up, it comes very vendor-focused. And I think, you've got limited opportunity to advance industry in Ireland. I think Ireland has got a great potential to do this. And if anything, my vote is for Ireland to actually mandate BIM. Alan, would you be okay if we've done a bit of vote? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, hands up, should Ireland mandate BIM? Oh. Mr. Chair, what would you have said there?
I'd say about, you just about shaded it, I'd say.
Yeah, excellent, yeah. So I think...
No, I think you got it very clear.
So I think, it's my vote, but so obviously you're on a journey plan in terms of where we are. So thank you for listening to our story. And I wish you well in terms of which way Ireland decides to go. But, we've been really impressed with the conversations we have, these events. I must admit, always the best conversations happen in the bar at night, and you can really hear where people are within their journey. So thank you for listening.